welcome back to HQ in the Know with Adam So Fun. That's me, Adam Ratliff, because I'm so fun. Every time. I'm such a dork. Every time I'm going to laugh about that. Today, we are talking about threading the machine. Now, this one's already threaded, which is perfect because maybe I wanted to stitch and I don't need to change thread. But I do want to change thread, and I want to show you all one thing. A lot of people don't realize that we can tie off just like a serger and pull that thread through. So I'm going to give myself some slack. So I pulled some thread off the cone that's loaded, and I'm just going to cut it. And I'll put it right here, out of the way. And I want to change to this Omni V variegated thread. I love Omni thread. It's one of my favorite lines to use. I find it very forgiving, especially if you're a new quilter or a new long armor. The Omni's strong, it doesn't break super easy, so it's really forgiving when you're first starting out. So I always send people to Omni when they're new long armors. So I'm just going to tie a knot. Here's my knot. We want to make sure it's going into the thread mass that is directly over the thread. It's running through everything, and I like to unthread it from the needle. I'm going to pull it right above the pigtail, and we'll talk about this and you'll actually come in close because I'm going to rethread it after this. But so I've tied off, and now I'm just going to pull. And I pull that thread all the way through. Here's my knot. You can't see it because it matches my shirt. But here's my knot. I can tie off, or I can cut it off, run through my pigtails, through the collar, if I can get it through, and then through the needle. And now I have changed the thread. If you follow me on social media, and if you don't, you should, Adam So Fun, S-E-W, that's everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, and which one am I missing? Oh, YouTube. You'll see that I love threads. I am a thread fanatic, I'm a thread fiend, I'm a thread junkie. Any of those words work for me when we talk about thread. So oftentimes I'm changing colors, maybe 10 colors on a quilt. So I'm doing a lot of this tie off. Sometimes I make thread samples. So I just finished one the other day and it had 16 different types of thread. So they were just tie off. The only time I ever actually change anything here is if I'm going to the super delicate threads that I might need to go through only one or two of the holes in my barber pole. But I'm going to cut this off because at some point you're gonna either run out of thread or forget to change your thread. Actually, we'll leave that there. I was making that thread sample and I had changed to go to the next thread, and I went to reply to an email and I started stitching, and then there was no thread there anymore because I forgot to actually put a cone of thread on there. I just ended up stitching the rest of my thread tail, so I had to rethread my machine. So it's always a good thing. It's always a good thing to maybe go back and thread this once a month if you're not sure how to do it, so you don't forget. So I know some educators, they'll do all their stitching and once a month come in, cut your thread off when they switch their color and rethread it from the beginning. So we also want to make sure that if you're having some issues with your thread, maybe it's breaking a lot, that you come in, maybe that's when you rethread it. You come back in, rethread the whole thing, make sure everything is threaded correctly, because that could lead to your issue. But we're going to bring you up close so you just kind of see this much of the machine, and I'm going to show you how to thread it. All right, we're back and you're zoomed in because you have to actually see what's going on. So I have that variegated thread in. It goes up into the thread mast, down into our first guide. We come into the barber pole, down through our tensioner. They missed a guide here. That's fine. We'll fix it when we rethread it. Back up to our take-up lever, back down through our pigtail, into the collar, and then into the needle. So I'm going to unthread this. Oh no, what did I do? We don't have to worry about unthreading it because we're going to learn how to thread it again. So I have this really fantastic black thread. We all love black. It's super fun. I mean, there's a time to use it, but I like something bright and fun when I quilt, like my shirt. So first step, I'm picking the first pole. And depending on what machine you have, you might have two, you might have one. You just want to make sure you're going up into the thread mass that is directly over that first piece. So now I'm up and you can see the thread is going up and then coming back down. So now I'm going into my first guide and we can just kind of click it in. Some of you might have a guide that's a little harder to click in. It just depends on how bent this is. It's fine. Sometimes I just thread it through. Mine is a little harder for me to get in, but we want to go into that guide. So now we have our barber pole, and it has the 3 holes. Very rarely are you only going to thread it through one. You know, maybe if you're using glitter thread or a monopoly, most of the time we're going to thread all 3. And how this works is we're going to go from back to front into each hole. So starting on the top one, I'm going back to front, and I'm trying to do this keeping my fingers out of the way, and then pulling it through. Now, do you see what I did there? I wrapped it around, and we don't want to wrap it around, so we have to be really careful. So back to front, and I pull it through. I'm gonna hold my tail out of the way and come back to front and then pull that through. And we'll see it's gonna wrap around the first time and it went to the back. So let's just fix that. And then get it out of the way and back to front one more time. Pull that through, and there we have it. And I'll get all this extra slack through. So we have our barber pole threaded. Now we're going into the guide right above your tensioner. Not all machines have that, so if you don't have that guide, lucky you. The Amara and Forte do, so I'm going through the guide, and I will try to get my fat fingers in there to get that, and lo and behold, my fat fingers worked. So now we're guide 1, barber pole, guide 2, and now this is the most important part. We are at the tensioner. So the tensioner is 2 plates that look like this. And we have to get that thread seated in the middle of those 2. So what I like to do is make a loop. I'm going to come around from the bottom, and I'm going to pull up and floss it into the tension disc. You will feel it because it makes it a little hard to pull. And you have to make sure that you're flossed in there, because if you're not flossed in there, you're just going to get tension issues for days. So I'm flossed in there. You have a little spring up here. This is your check spring to make sure your thread's not broke. So I'm gonna go back up into the check spring. So now if I pulled the thread, you can see that spring kind of shake. We have our 7 bar, so I'm gonna go under the 7 bar, and you can see how that spring goes. And then now I'm coming back up to the take-up lever. So I always twist my thread a little bit and then shoot it right through that hole. Pull this through. So we have guide 1, barber pole, guide 2, tension discs, check spring, 7 lever, take up lever, or 7 bar, take up lever, pigtails. I'll just fling it into my pigtails. And now I can go down to the needle. I'm gonna cut myself a nice fresh tip into the collar and then into the needle hole. And now we have rethreaded the machine. It's that easy. All right, everyone, so that's how you thread the machine. Remember, we put drab black on, and we really want the variegated on, so I'm going to, again, pull some slack, cut it off, get that drab out of here. We're turning drab into fab. Do my little tie off. Oops. And I can just pull it through. And it's that easy. So you don't ever have to really thread that machine again. Although, like I said, you should practice threading it like once a month so you don't forget. The other thing I was gonna say, so this is a Floriani thread. You can use all types of thread. Like I said, go follow me on social media. I have a video of making a thread sample on my YouTube channel. And but if you're using something like this, which is typically an embroidery thread, it's a tri-level poly. They're the ones with a lot of shine. These are a little bit more slippery than other threads. So as you're pulling it through, the knot might come undone. And if it does, that's fine. Just pick up where the knot came undone and finish threading. Usually it's gonna be in those tension discs. So you shouldn't have an issue in any other place, but tie it off, pull it through. If you have an issue, just finish off that threading. It's a piece of cake. But thanks for watching today. As always, like and subscribe to the Stitch House channel, and go follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Follow me, Adam So Fun, on everything SEW. And you know what? We'll see you next week for another video. Bye all.